A record-breaking offensive performance, a masterful win, and the top 10 plays at the midway point of the season. I'm Kevin Jackman. All that and more on the Red Zone. Coming into Saturday, the North Central Cardinals had beaten the North Park Vikings 19 straight times. Can they make it number 20 and move their record to 2-0 in conference play? Well, the Vikings are certainly trying to stem that tide. First quarter, starting off a lot like how that Milliken game ended, with Dylan Warden living in the end zone. 7-0 Cardinals lead on a 27-yard run from the junior quarterback. Later on in the first, Dom Zavalia knocks it through. Believe it or not, that's the first field goal for Zavalia on the season. 10-0 NCC. A couple of minutes into the second quarter, it's the Vikings jumping on the board with a touchdown strike from 1 yard out. Extra point gets blocked, so make it a 10-6 tally. Next time the Cardinals get the ball, sophomore back Austin Brunig gets going, darting towards midfield, a pickup of 32, but the drive would stall. No stalling for Austin Brunig. Another handoff to Brunig, left side, has a hole, goes to the sideline, tiptoes and into the end zone, a touchdown for North Central.
And that Cardinal offensive line.
25-yard run. This will become a trend. The end of the second quarter becomes quite an adventure. North Park with it. T.D. Conway with a sneaky play action. Puts some pretty touch on the ball and finds 6'5" wideout Devin Childress for a long touchdown. Vikings looking to conquer the Cardinals. 2-minute drill. Time to air it out, right? Wrong. Just give it to Brunig. Big hole. And he has to make one man miss. He does at the 40. Cuts back to the middle. Back to the outside. He's got blockers. And he's gone! 221 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns for the bruising Brunig. Somehow, some way, Cards getting the ball back before the half. And with time running out, Warden finds Alex Twinkle Toes Ulmer on the sideline to set up another Dom Zavalia field goal. 27-13 at the half. Speaking of Alex Ulmer, Warden with the drop back and goes over the middle, over the seam, and a one-handed grab! Alex Ulmer! Oh my!
That was fantastic. Man, he really laid out for that thing.
Yep, that'll be this week's play of the game. Same drive, and the Cardinals cap it off with a Matt Randolph touchdown. Third straight game with a touchdown for the senior. NCC not done with the Vikings quite yet. Justin Hunterford getting in on the fun, going deep to Ryan Cool for the score. Cards really pulling away from North Park. And I mean really pulling away as Hunterford keeps it himself and scoots into the end zone. Vikings tack on a late touchdown, but it's a 47-20 final. Cardinals move to 3-2, 2-0 in conference play. Welcome to the Red Zone. Once again joined by head football coach Jeff Thorne. Coach, you guys jumped out to a nice 10-point lead right off the bat, and you guys kept your feet to the pedal, and you really completed that game pretty well over the course of those 60 minutes. How did you come out of that game thinking of your performance?
Felt good about it. I felt like we left a lot of points on the board. You know, we got those 10 in the first 2 possessions, and then we went for it on 4th down, didn't get it. Later in the game, we fumbled in the red zone, deep in the red zone, missed a field goal, missed an extra point. So you walk out of a game like that and you feel good about, hey, we moved the ball a lot, but we left a lot of points out there. We got to finish better in the red zone, kind of was my takeaway.
So now you guys rushed 58 times, and those 58 rushes produced almost 400 yards on the ground. That is an astounding number. And the catalyst for that was Austin Brunig. He was just phenomenal on Saturday. I mean, when you look at the sophomore, how is he acclimating to the starter's workload?
Well, the catalyst was actually the offensive lineman, but he's doing a great job. Austin has a special set of gifts. His speed is he's the fastest player we've ever had in the program. You know, and when he gets into the open field, it doesn't look like he's running anywhere near as fast as he is because he's so smooth. His head doesn't move. It's just effortless, but he's flying.
Nolan Brannick told me after the game that you guys mentioned at halftime it almost seemed like Austin was jogging up and down the field, which is a pretty special gift. You look at the whole game, 700 yards of offense. You and I were just chatting before the show started. Did it feel like 700 to you guys when you guys came out of the game?
No, I was shocked when they told me that we had amassed that many yards, just because, again, when you leave points out there, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth and you forget how you got down there. But was really proud of how our offensive line played, and quarterback position played very well between the two guys, and obviously Austin. And the receivers did a great job blocking, as we'll see when we look at some video.
And you mentioned right before this, a conference record that had stood for almost 30 years almost fell. That was close.
Almost had it.
Close.
Almost had it. We lost 4 yards on the last play, and we missed it by a yard. So, you know, that was disappointing.
But you didn't know that after the game. You guys
I had no idea.
For it.
Right.
But on the flip side, the defensive line was fantastic again. And we talked about these guys just week in and week out, 67 yards on the ground against them. What is your takeaway about this defensive line that just keeps getting better and better? Can they keep getting better? Have they reached their peak, or is there still room to improve?
Oh, there's plenty of room for improvement. They're doing a great job. Every week we are getting better. And we're focusing on the things that they do need to continue to improve upon. So Coach Janisek, our defensive line coach, has done just an outstanding job with that group. And you're right, each week we're seeing progress, which is what you want to see as a coach. We're heading into week 6, and we need to see that continued improvement week to week.
Especially defensively, it seems like some freshmen have stepped up. How important has depth been for you guys? Because, I mean, you rely on recruiting to bring those freshmen in, those guys that can contribute right away, and now they're stepping up. We've seen some names over the course of the last few weeks that have emerged as contributors. Yeah,
our recruiting class was a really strong one, and it has helped us a lot. We've sustained our number of injuries this year. Both of our starting defensive ends at the beginning of the season, you know, we lost one of them in our preseason scrimmage for the season to an ACL, and Nick Samuelson in game 1 on the second play of the game. So from a defensive line standpoint, I think part of the reason you're seeing that improvement week to week is there's a lot of guys playing that maybe we weren't expecting to play, or they weren't expecting to play anywhere near as much as they have.
So now I want to go to special teams, because there were a couple of miscues this past week, but overall, special teams have been very consistent this year. You look at a guy like Dom Zavalia, when it comes down to crunch time, do you feel confident that if you're in a tight ball game, you could throw him in there and say, win us this ball game?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he hasn't had a lot of opportunities this year. You know, we've gone for it several times, kind of right on the cusp of field goal range. Wind has played a factor in that. But Dom is an excellent kicker. He's been phenomenal as a punter this year. He's had a great season. And I think with more opportunities, you're going to see his skill as a kicker too.
Now, right before halftime, I'm recalling you guys were right on the cusp, maybe like a 58-yard field goal. Had you not gone for the pass completion, you guys got it to Alex Ulmer. Was Dom trying to lobby for you guys to take that extra long field goal just to see if he could make it?
No, you know, he talks to me before the game and gives me an idea of where he's comfortable both directions. And we felt like 50 to 52, 53 with the wind. So we were still a little bit outside of his range. We were really hopeful to get the ball out of our hands a lot faster than what we did, so I was a little nervous upstairs. But Dylan did a great job of throwing the ball where Alex could catch it and get out of bounds, and everything worked out. We got the field goal.
Well, we're going to break down some game tape coming up, and we'll also preview this Carthage game.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back on the Red Zone. Before we chat with the players, it's time for this week's play of the game. It seems like every week a Cardinal receiver does something spectacular, and this week was no exception, as Dylan Warden lays the ball out and Alex Ulmer snares it away from the turf. I have a feeling we'll see this play later on. Time to sneak inside the huddle and break down some game tape with Coach Thorne. Coach, first clip I want to get to is that Austin Brunig run. That first burst, he allowed himself to get into open space, and again, the catalyst was the offensive line. From there, it just seemed like the wide receivers and tight ends got up the field, and Austin made some pretty good decisions. Let's go ahead and take a look at this particular play.
Yeah, right there when he gets into the clear, I think you can see up at the top of the screen, that's Corey Hartema coming from the top of the numbers on the opposite side of the field to get involved. Ryan Kuhl and Alex Ulmer were on the play side, and both did a phenomenal job. We really take a lot of pride in how our receivers block downfield, and it's such a huge part of our running game, perimeter running.
You take a look at that one cut that Austin made towards the center of the field. Was that something that you guys were kind of instructing him from the sideline to say, no, cut that back to the sideline? Or was that something just he realized, hey, I should go back to the sideline?
You know, you learn something fairly early in your coaching career that there's this thing called overcoaching. And you got to let the players be players once they're out there. And Austin's vision took over, and, you know, he made a great cut and then had the patience to wait for his blockers to come and help him take that all the way down the sideline.
So now the next play I want to get to is the touchdown throw from Justin Hunterford to Ryan Cool. Ryan missed the week before, but came back in this one with, I mean, just a phenomenal effort.
Yeah, played
he
really
was
well.
everywhere, and on this particular throw, he did a really nice job. It seemed like blocking the defensive back out.
Yeah, Justin, great recognition by Justin, knowing that we had isolated coverage over there and a mismatch from a size standpoint. He did a great job of throwing the ball where Ryan could make a play on it without throwing it too far up the field.
Now, is it Justin's arm that kind of allows him to have that ability to go to that back shoulder fade?
Yeah, it's just touch. That's touch and just a feel for where I need to put the ball. We talk about throwing to space a lot rather than trying to lead a receiver all the time perfectly. So you hit him on the move, throw to space. Where's the open space, and let the receiver make a play on the ball. With
a receiver like Ryan Coy, I can imagine that space is pretty big.
A lot of space when you're 6'5". That helps. Yeah.
Now, the last play I want to get to is a defensive play. It was Tom Sora, the middle linebacker. We talked about him earlier. On this one, came right back up the middle, clogged up a hole, and was able to make a tackle for a loss.
Yeah, it's a good read by Tommy and just getting into his run fit and doing it aggressively. And Tommy keeps getting better every week. Really, really pleased with the progress he's making. And really our linebacking core in general is playing better every week, and we'll need that to continue.
Now, is that game tape recognition or just instinct that Tom has to rely on?
It's both. It's both studying film and knowing what tendencies the offense have. And then second part of that is, again, letting players be players and letting their instincts take over.
So now let's shift gears to this upcoming week. We have Carthage. You're heading up to Kenosha. What kind of team can we expect this week from the Redmen?
Much, much improved. They're very good. They gave Wesleyan all they could handle 2 weeks ago. They're big and physical on offense. It's going to be a downhill running game that we're going to have to defend. And defensively, they've got some really big defensive linemen, a couple linebackers that have a lot of experience now, having started a couple years back. And their secondary is very athletic, a little bit young, but they're very athletic. So, again, we've got our work cut out for us in this conference. You don't have a week where you can, take it off. You got to be prepared to play every week.
Now, with that said, you can't take a week off. It's tough to keep that focus on this game, considering the fact that the battle for the Little Brass Bell is the following week. Have you found that there's any kind of shift in focus, or have your players been really good at maintaining that gaze on Carthage?
Yeah, we talk every week about going 1-0, and we can't get to the Wheaton game until we take care of business with Carthage, and that's the team that we have to play this week. We've got to be prepared. Saturday, it's not a difficult place, or not an easy place. It's a very difficult place to play. So, no, we're not looking ahead to Wheaton. We'll get to Wheaton on Sunday.
Well, I appreciate your time, Coach. We look forward to seeing what you guys can do against Carthage.
All right, great.
It's time for the top 10 plays from the first half of the season. The defense gets us started off. With Milliken up by a score entering the fourth, the defense clamped down thanks to Justin Sturzma and Jack McCoy combining forces for the sack. Jimmy Pelnarch came away with it, and the junior is absolutely fired up. First game of the season, first points of the season, and they come from the senior Matt Randolph on special teams. Bats it down, scoops it up, and scores the first 6 points of 2015 for NCC. That's certainly one way to pump up the home crowd. O'Shane Brown checks in at number 8.
Big hole, right side, burst past everybody, into the open field, tripped up from behind, so going, touchdown O'Shane Brown! Touchdown Brown, had a gap, and he goes for 50 to score for the Cardinals, 26-7.
Alex Ulmer has had some great plays this year, but this one tops them all.
Middle over the seam, and a one-handed grab! Alex Ulmer. Oh, my.
That was fantastic. Man, he really laid out for that thing.
How about another highlight reel grab, but this time it's a deep strike down the sideline, and D. Gray reaches around and plucks it out of thin air. Good for number 6 on our list. Austin Brunig sees O'Shane Brown and raises him 22 yards.
And he has to make one man miss. He does at the 40, cuts back to the middle, back to the outside. He's got blockers, and he's gone! Austin Brunig!
I wonder what that run will do for his average.
The Cardinal receivers like to dive, don't they? First Alex Ulmer, now it's Ryan Kuhl's turn to sprawl out. Now that's how you take advantage of being 6'4". I know, it's not a single play, but it may have saved the season, so number 3 on the list goes to Dylan Warden for 3 rushing touchdowns in the fourth quarter against Milliken. Cardinals finished the game off with 35 unanswered. You would think a red zone trip for Wesley would be an automatic, but Brandon Kibbe has other ideas. How about that for an interception? Our top play was sensational, and it comes from Pat Cravens. Picks off Tom Kelly of UW-Platteville and punches the time clock. Let's just take a step back and admire the work. Five missed tackles, and Cravens ends up just a shade over 20 yards away from scoring. Good enough for the Red Zone's top play of the first half of the season. We're joined by 2 guys who work hard in the trenches, Jack McCoy and Luis Echevarria. You guys are off to a tremendous start on both of your sides of the ball. I want to start off with Jack. It just seems like the defensive line keeps getting better and better and better. You guys have lost some key pieces, but you keep plugging guys in. What is the root of your success so far this year for that defensive line?
I feel that Coach Jancek is he's really the key. He came back after a year off, and during camp, he just ignited us, and we just have been working so hard every day in practice that when we get to the game, it's just natural that we don't get as tired as we were a couple of years before.
Is there a motto or kind of a rally cry that you guys share on that defensive line to try and ramp yourselves up?
We don't really have a rally call, but I feel that I've talked to a couple of the other D linemen. This is probably the closest that we've ever been as a group since I've been here, which I think really helps.
So now, Lewis, on the offensive line, kind of the similar story. There's a couple injuries. You guys have been shuffling guys around. How have you guys been able to maintain communication and really, do a really nice job in both pass and run protection?
I think we have really good captains. Eric Knaprick and Pat Volger are doing a really good job. And, for example, people will always count the guys that aren't playing as out, but for Pat Volger has been there every practice, and he's been talking to a lot of the younger guys and giving everyone some direction. And, I feel like he's keeping us together.
You mentioned some of those young guys. How are those guys kind of assimilating into the offensive line? You feel like they're doing a pretty nice job at picking it up?
Yeah, I think it's a very open environment. Everybody's there to work, and Coach Wilson's really making sure that everybody's on the same page. We're trying to get, everybody to a place where, if need be, they're in the game and they can, produce what we need them to produce. 400
yards on the ground. That has to be a lot of fun for offensive linemen. I've always heard this, obviously with my size, I never played offensive line. But I heard that you guys prefer to run block over pass blocking because you guys get to fire off the ball. How fun is it to run 58 times in a game?
Oh, it's awesome. You get to line up against another guy, and, you, especially at the beginning of the drive, you line up and you see the whole field, and you just see the length shortening, and it's nice to get in that end zone.
So now I want to go back to defense. The linebacking core is young, but they are very fast and they're very good. And that starts with Tom Sora, who's in the middle. You don't get to watch him because usually your back's turned to him. But when you go back and you look, what impresses you with Tom?
Tommy just is a natural at filling the gaps that he needs to fill. A lot of times, depending on which side of the ball it runs, he's got to fill a different way. And he's really good about reading his keys and filling his gap, which helps us because we're a gap scheme, and we have to have our gap, and we know that Tommy's going to be able to fill his, so we can just be confident in doing what we need to do.
You throw in Kevin Schroeder, you throw in Justin Sturzma. I mean, that's a wicked fast linebacking core. When you look at them, do you think this might be the best linebacking core that you guys are going to see this year in CCIW or non-conference?
Overall, I think our linebacking crew, it might be one of the best in the conference based on truly speed. It really helps us at line be a lot more physical when we know that if we don't get a perfect step outside, that we have so much speed that can recover, and there won't be another offense that'll run around us on the edge.
Is it fun to kind of fly around like that? Because you're on the outside as well. You're coming around the edge, and you have those linebackers helping you guys out on the edge. Is it more fun to work in space?
Yeah, I always find it more enjoyable to be able to play with a little more room to work, and I love just turning around and seeing everybody fly to the ball and getting 11 hats to the tackle every play.
Now, Lewis, I want to go back to you. How hard is it, in your mind, for opposing teams to look at you guys and go, all right, we have Dylan Warden and Justin Hunterford at quarterback, two totally different skill sets. Matt Randolph and Austin Brunig at running back, two totally different skill sets. How hard is it for you, for opposing teams to look at that offense and say, this is what we're going to do against these guys?
I mean, I think it's just they might get a feel of what each guy is good at, but I feel like all those guys are extremely good, and they're not, one-dimensional. I think they can all produce in different ways. I think Dylan can pass as well as run, and Justin has been, running around a little bit too and getting some yards on the ground. Yeah, exactly. So, and as an offensive line, I think we're very comfortable with having them behind us, and they usually make us right.
So now Brad Spencer has taken a bigger role this year as offensive coordinator, and you've gotten a front row seat to take that in. From your perspective, how has he done in his new position as the coaching staff, and is it any bit different for you guys?
Yeah, I think the transition was kind of seamless. I don't think any of the guys have really noticed anything different. Everyone's comfortable with, the changes. I mean, to be honest, I don't think anyone really notices anything.
So now I want to look ahead to Carthage, because this is a game that, you guys are going to have to scrape your way to victory, and then the next week you have Wheaton. With that said, Jack, how hard is it to keep the focus on Carthage, knowing what's coming up next, but knowing that there's a good opponent this week?
I think that we really work well as a team, just focusing on one game at a time. Carthage is a big up front, and we have a big challenge from the D-line perspective this week, and it's going to be a good game coming.
So now we're at the midway point of the season, and you have 5 games left. At least regular season games. You hope there's another game left after that. Do you guys feel ready? I'm going to go to Lewis. Do you feel ready for the final home stretch, these final 5 games?
Yeah, I think everyone's fired up to play the next couple games. We have some pretty big games towards the end of the season, so I feel like it's not going to be hard to keep up the intensity, and especially as juniors, I feel like Jack feels the same way. We've been with the seniors for 3 years now, and we want to give them what they deserve to end with a bang and just play our hearts out.
Well, best of luck at Carthage, and we look forward to seeing what you guys can do in the next couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the show, guys. Coming up, we'll get caught up on all the North Central sports from Clark Tuscher. We'll be right back on the Red Zone.
Every minute, my world seems to get a little smaller. My world is driving me crazy.
My world? What world? If your world is controlled by alcohol, there is hope.
We're AA, alcoholics helping other alcoholics get sober.
You'll find us in the phone book, your local newspaper, or on the web at aa.org.
Back here with Sports Information Director Clark Tuscher. Clark, I want to start off with soccer, because the men's and women's soccer teams both look like they're on the upswing. Let's start with the men's, because they had a phenomenal win against North Park this past weekend. They got that win. It was a shutout, and they look pretty good doing it.
Yeah, they haven't been too much lower than they were going into that game. They lost 10 in a row and just seemed like they couldn't get anything going. And you're playing a ranked opponent on the road in the conference, and wound up turning in their best defensive performance of the year by far. Shut out a team and a leading scorer that had scored in every single game. which was reflected in Johnny Borzik being named the Conference Defensive Player of the Week on the strength of his effort in that game. But to come away with a victory against such a quality opponent like that, it's definitely a positive sign, and it couldn't have come soon enough with 5 conference games still yet to play.
So now is the mood surrounding the team a little bit more positive, seeing that they took that big game and they still have time to kind of right the ship and end the season on a nice note? Yeah,
I think the message was, great job, but you still have a chance to win something here, and you haven't done it yet. So I think there was a certain amount of celebration, and now it's back to getting on task.
So now the women's team also won. We've seen flashes of really good play from the women's team this year. Can they be a force come season's end when we get to CCIW tournament?
Well, they continue to be sound defensively, and that's where they've built that program to be strong in the back. So, they had another shutout win on Saturday. That's the 5th one this year. So that's 5 out of 7 wins. The formula is set there. So they're 2-0 in the conference. They've got 3 games at home out of the last 5. So they're definitely in a good position to, get into position to do the things that they wanted to do at the beginning of the year.
Now, another team that looks pretty good right now is women's volleyball. They hit that tough stretch, kind of in the middle of their season, but 4 of their last 5 games they've won, and the most recent one was a record-breaking affair.
Come from behind 3-2 win at Milliken on Tuesday. A big conference victory, and our setter, Laura Kluk, set the career school record for assists, something that she'd felt like she should have already had. She missed a few matches due to injury recently. Came back and helped us get a real big win against an opponent that's been very tough for North Central to play against the last few years.
Now, we were kind of talking about this a few weeks ago when they were coming out of the non-conference portion of the schedule. This is a team that we didn't quite know what they were going to bring when it got to conference schedule, but now that they are in, you have to feel pretty confident that this could be a team to watch out for at the end of the season, right?
Yeah, for a season that consists of 35 matches just in the regular season alone, you're going to have some peaks and valleys. So it seems like they've come through that valley, and now they're in a position to finish the season strong, which is where they want to be.
Now, moving to cross country, the women's cross country team had a first-place finish at the Benedictine Eagle Invite, and that's without some of their top runners, which is pretty impressive. They got dropped off the national list right before that, though. This should be a team that should be on the national list, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's hard to say because there's so many teams that are in those rankings that haven't seen each other. And that's something that'll sort itself out between this weekend's meet at UW Oshkosh, where several of the ranked teams are going to be, and then the postseason meets coming up. So certainly they'll get a chance to put themselves back into it. But for having sat the top 3 or 4 runners on Friday and still been able to get a win with some strong pack running, definitely a positive sign.
Now, the men's team sits ranked 2nd in the nation. Do they even care about rankings at this point? They slipped. They were number 1 at the season start. They're now number 2. Does it even make an impact on the way they think?
On a day-to-day basis, I don't think it's going to change anything about what they do. Just like with the women, that'll sort itself out. All the teams that are up in the top of that ranking, they're going to see before the year's up. So they'll have a chance to prove, that they belong at the top. And, they've certainly had a decent amount of success doing that the last few years.
Now, the final thing I want to get to is women's tennis. They had a nice regular season wrap-up against Milliken on Saturday. They won 8-1. And this team is young, and they look to continue to improve, and they're going to go into the tournament on a nice high note. Yeah,
they've had a bit of a culture change with the new head coach, and I think everybody's responded really well to that. They've got a conference tournament coming up where, the majority of the team, is coming off a pretty strong stretch of play. So they're feeling very good about, their chances of finishing highly and placing high enough to get into the automatic qualifier tournament next spring.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of the Red Zone. The Cardinal football team travels to Carthage this Saturday, and we'll have highlights following the contest right here on NCTV 17. I'm Kevin Jackman saying so long. We'll see you next week on the Red Zone.